6 years ago my son Matthew had a daughter with his now ex-wife Josie. I have always thought of Josie as my own daughter, so when they divorced 7 years ago due to my son cheating, I was conflicted and disappointed. Josie wasn't particularly close with any of her family, so my husband and I naturally took them in. Josie was an angel. She had insisted that we didn't have to lift a finger more than before we had taken them in, and though she was hurt, she kept civil around Matthew. My husband and I held a huge hand in raising their daughter Ruth, because Matthew remarried less than a year later and now has a 4-year-old son after disowning Ruth. 2 years ago my husband was diagnosed with lung cancer. It was hard on everyone, especially Ruth. They were extremely close. She told him about her girlfriends and boyfriends before anyone else and has always wanted him to be the one to walk her down the aisle at her wedding. Matt rarely ever visited and didn't answer our calls, often saying that we had other kids, so it wasn't like my husband was dying lonely. Last night Matt stopped by to talk about inheritance. He never mentioned Josie nor Ruth and hinted that he thought he should get more inheritance than his siblings the entire time. My husband and I shared awkward looks until he decided to cut in. He explained that everyone would get a piece, but he'd focus more on Ruth and Bonnie, one of our other grandkids. Matt got angry and said that Ruth was just a bastard and that his son deserved more than her. My husband got furious after that and left the room saying that he wouldn't include Matthew at all. Matt yelled back and turned to me saying that Ruth wasn't worth it because she'd just grow up to be a whore like her mother. I told him that I'd rather have her mother as my daughter than him as my son and insisted that he leave. I'm getting phone calls from Matt's wife and family friends saying that my husband and I overreacted, and he was just angry that we were playing favorites. To clear some things up, Josie did not cheat on Matthew. Josie and Matthew met later in college and Josie was known as a party girl. Before that, Ruth isn't the product of an affair, but we are planning on getting a DNA test because what Matthew said has gotten under Ruth's skin. She was at the house when this occurred and overheard it. When it came to taking in Josie and Ruth, we didn't hesitate because Josie is not from here. She and Matt lived in another country until he moved them here a few months before he got caught cheating, and they had nowhere else to go as Josie was a stay-at-home mom. I had no intentions of choosing Josie over Matt, then and now, and I never discouraged Matt from visiting. I tried to make it very clear that we weren't picking and choosing when we took Josie in. We just wanted her and our granddaughter to be safe and have a good home. I got pregnant with my daughter Emma at 18. I lived at home and was going to college and working. When I got pregnant, my parents kicked me out and I had to move in with my ex. I dropped out of school and quit my job to take care of Emma because my ex told me he would support me. When I was 22, he was 24, he graduated law school. He told me I had to move out because he wanted to find a wife. My parents had forgiven me, so I moved in with them. We didn't have a court order, but we split custody pretty much 25/75 with me having more time. When Emma was 6, he married his now wife. She couldn't have any more kids and wanted Emma and her daughter to be sisters. Over the next 3 years, Emma spent less and less time with me. She'd throw a fit if I tried to pick her up. They gave her things I couldn't. When she was 8, she told me she hated me. I never blamed her for the lies her father put in her head, because even though I lived at home, I was in college and working and did my best to provide her for her, but obviously they could do more. They took me to court when she was 10 and surprise, the lawyer and his doctor wife with their $1 million home beat me in court. They painted me out to be this horrible parent and Emma backed them up. They got primary custody and I got visitation. But Emma refused to see me. I gave her money and gifts, but she didn't want me in her life. When I was 30, I met my husband. He is the most amazing man I have ever met. He's seen me struggle with this and been very supportive. He has a daughter Emma's age and a son who is 5 years younger. They lost their mom and were very welcoming and loving. They treated me like their mom. Emma made zero efforts to get to know my husband and stepkids. Emma and stepdaughter just graduated high school this past May. And my parents also recently passed and gave me their estate since I am an only child. I have decided to pay for my stepdaughter's entire college tuition and buy her a car, pay for an apartment. Emma contacted me a week ago and told me she missed me and wanted to see me. This shocked me, seeing as we haven't talked in a year. We met up and she told me she heard my parents died and asked if she could have some money to pay for college. I was shocked and said, "Well, what about your dad and his wife?" She said, "My mom and dad want me to pay for this on my own to teach me responsibility, and I believe I am entitled to money. Seeing as you ruined my life," I was very hurt and told her, after years of ignoring me and telling me, "I am not your mother, you demand money from me. I am not your wallet. My husband is telling me what I did was right, but my ex is telling me I'm a piece of shit and I owe this to her. My stepdaughter feels bad and offered her college money because my daughter and her friends have been harassing her." I said, "Absolutely not, that is your money." So I live in a flat with 3 other people: childhood best friend, a guy from my uni course, and his cousin. For the most part we get along really well and rarely have disagreements. However, this has been a real point of contention lately. About 6 months ago I began a relationship with a guy I've known for a couple of years. I know it's still a fairly new relationship, but I really like him. He makes me really happy and we're pretty serious about each other. Up until recently, he would come visit me at my flat 3 to 4 times a week. This was mostly due to the fact that I have chronic fatigue and going on proper dates can be really challenging for me. Instead of going out to dinner or a film or whatever, we'd just chill in my room or the living room, watch TV and get takeout or cook together. I didn't really consult anyone about this, Bex to say. All the other flatmates have their partners over as often if not more so, and B, he rarely spends the night and usually leaves before 10 p.m. because of his work schedule. So the issue, 2 weeks ago, comes to me and tells me that I need to stop having my boyfriend over because it's starting to get annoying. I asked her why and she said it's irritating to have someone who doesn't live there skulking around all the time. I pointed out that her boyfriend sleeps over 3 nights a week and thus is here more often than mine, and she claimed that was different because they've been together for 11 years and are moving in together once her lease is up. She said she's discussed it with the other flatmates and they've all agreed he needs to stop coming over or he has to chip into the rent, because it's getting ridiculous. Note, nobody else's partner chips in on the rent. I confirmed with the other 2 that yes, this is an agreement they've made. Though my best friend said basically made her agree by threatening to cut off the Wi-Fi and utilities, which are in her name, if she didn't. I asked if this rule applies to everyone, but apparently it's just me. I pointed out that it's unfair and was basically told to deal with it. My potential assholery, I've begun loudly insisting that if my partner isn't allowed to come over, neither is anybody else's. If I answer the door to anyone's partner, I'll send them away. If I come home and someone's partner is there, I'll make a point to mention that I thought we weren't having partners who don't pay rent over anymore. I've asked boyfriend over and over how much rent he's paying and pretend to be affronted and make a fuss when he says he doesn't. Everyone's pretty pissed at me and is telling me I'm being unreasonable. I know I'm being petty, but I think it's unreasonable that there's one rule for me and another for everyone else, and I'm trying to make that point. Am I really the asshole here? Some questions people keep asking. If I knew of something my boyfriend was doing to be annoying / if anyone had told me that he was doing something, I'd have included it. I'm not aware of anything he does, and when I ask why doesn't like him, I just get a shrug and just do. I will also state I'm bi, and she's never had an issue with any female partners I've had. We don't hang out in the living room much. We literally only use it if there's something we want to watch that I can't get on my bedroom TV and there's nobody else in there. We use the kitchen more often than the living room, but honestly even that isn't that often. We eat far too much takeout pizza rip. A lot of people seem confused, so just clearing up who's who in the situation. The one who brought all this up is not my best friend. Not to get too much into a tangent, but basically just over a year ago I was moving out of halls at university and was looking for a new place, so we decided to move in together. At the same time, a dude from my course was looking for a flat share. We couldn't find a 3-bed but found a really nice 4-bed, and he mentioned his cousin was also looking for somewhere to live, so she got on board too. I only met her last year and we don't really know each other very well. By chronic fatigue I mean chronic fatigue syndrome. Sorry, that's apparently so unclear. My boyfriend of almost 3 years told me a series of white lies that to me seem more serious. Can't tell if I'm overreacting or if this is actually indicative of a bigger problem. My boyfriend and I have been dating for almost 3 years, living together for 2. We have a pretty good relationship, obviously with ups and downs, but we make it work and are happy. A little background on me and my boyfriend. I come from a single-parent home. My father was absent. My mother was and is by no means perfect, but she did her best with what she had. We were poor. Life was never easy for us, but we had each other. Since I was pretty young, I've wanted to pay her back someday. I've worked incredibly hard to be able to do so. I help her financially as much as I can and regularly pay her bills / send her cash. I'm also her only living child now, as my brother passed away 5 years ago, which basically left me to help her. I don't care, I love my mother, and the right thing to do is to help her when she needs it. But is stressful. This is relevant because my boyfriend described coming from a somewhat similar past, and it is something we have bonded over. Having the mutual experiences seemed to bring us closer. He told me he also helped his parents financially, and we would often vent to each other about the stress it brings. I am not one to confide in many people, so having someone who I felt like actually understood me was meaningful to me. So here is where the lies come in, and I need someone to either tell me I'm not crazy and this is horror, or that I am crazy and this isn't a huge deal. I'm fine with either. When we met, my boyfriend lived in a condo in a pretty swanky part of the city. I live in the US Northeast. He told me he owned that apartment / condo. I found this to be interesting / odd because he was 28 at the time, and I know this property is upwards of $650,000 on the low end, and he was in an entry-level job for only like 2 years, so the numbers just didn't really add up. Whatever, maybe he's good at saving. But then, since living together, I never once saw a piece of mail for a mortgage payment, electric bill, taxes, nothing. Not for 2 whole years. Very odd. Also, when we started living together, he didn't have his room rented out in the former apartment yet, so he was still responsible for that portion of the rent. He would send a Venmo payment to his mother on the 1st of every month for his portion. I don't own property, but I can't think of a scenario where I would Venmo my mother to pay the mortgage on a property I supposedly own. Getting more odd. He would then go to his parents' house for an afternoon and come back really upset. Usually when I would ask why, it was because they were having financial problems and he needed to help them out. I totally understood this and supported him. He literally has cried on my shoulder about this many times. He tried to start a company years back and ended up getting into debt somehow. He told me this debt was $17,000 and that he paid it off. I'm confused because I met him only 2 to 3 years after the supposed debt accrued / company dissolved, and it was already paid off. He told me when he moved back home after the business failed, he was $17,000 in debt and living at his parents' house working at a minimum wage job. How someone with a minimum wage job pays off that much debt in 3 years, I'll never know. We got into a fight a few weeks ago and I finally had enough and confronted him about these things. He doesn't help his parents, they actually pay his phone bill, and this was all a lie. He doesn't own that apartment, he didn't pay off that debt from his company. He initially told me his parents helped pay it off and then like 3 minutes later, came clean. And said that his business partner paid it off, so I have literally no idea what the truth is there, and if anything, in my eyes. His parents are the ones who are financially supporting him. So now, I'm dating a 31-year-old man who doesn't pay his own phone bill, was lying to me and / or completely fabricating aspects of his life for 3 years. And then when confronted about it, continued to make up lies and then came clean about them 5 minutes later. I'm obviously concerned that he could lie for this long, about fundamentally important things like our values, and so on. I sincerely thought I would marry this man. He seemed to understand me like no one else and to be a truly caring and genuine person. Now I'm having a hard time rationalizing actually planning a life around someone who would not only lie about their background and family etc. but also financial aspects. Aside from that, I now can't tell what is the truth and what is a lie. I've also noticed other things he has lied about, called him out on it, and he has denied it outright to my face. I see this as a form of gaslighting, as I know I'm not wrong, but he is trying to convince me otherwise. Am I overreacting? Is this a white lie that went haywire? Or is this actually a series of complete and utter bullshit used to manipulate me? And also, is it insane for me to actually consider a life with this man?